to weave with light begins in stillness then, doesn't it? We look at the breath. Just pause. Slight breathing, presence, right? There's accuracy. Accuracy is required, right? Nice flow, harmonic flow. So many times we think new, or we think intricate, complex. We think complex is intricate, or new is, so much different, right? And new light structures is complex, or look at some of these geometries, for example, some of the art that I create. Yeah, it's more complex, but that's because the instructions are precise and it requires a numerous layers of intricacy and precision for precise instructions, just as like one code, right? One code has a massive amount of energy and information inside. And what is energy? Is information. Information is energy. But when we come into, as we come into stillness and presence, realize the light is right there. And even there's instruction within the breath into coherence and centered direction, the harmonics. We can find ourselves right there. And we can also find the living libraries of light, which are instructions right there, because light codes are technologies, but they're also libraries of information. And so with that, we can start to bridge what we've been perceived or called or projected sometimes. This mysticized is so different, perhaps, by certain perceptions of bridging that mysticism with technological clarity, knowing that this technology requires, it's not optional, requires precise direction and directed authority, meaning that we're standing in our light, directing our authority while we are directing it, right? And it really overrides some of the passivity, if that's a word, the passivity of, allowing things to come through while we are innately light, and light is, and light does, and all is, and all does innately. But with precision, it does so more specifically as we're functioning in our authority, right? So bridging that so-called gap, or bridging that of the passivity of bringing a transmission through, perhaps, when there's a much different aspect and infinite potentiality to build and create in such a different way, in such a precise, specific, harmonic way with the divine universal law, with the precision of utilizing light correctly. And yeah, I am saying correctly. It can be different perceptions, right, of how that is, but really to be so in harmonic correctness as technology, as energy, as frequency, and as consciously directing. And this is an example, but any code, it's divine information, it's divine intelligence, it's light, it's luminous light. So it's condensed, right? It's condensed to form. We say form, but it's condensed in a way into a symbology and lines of symbology, but it's also translatable and transcribable. We'll get into that in a moment, but it's basically condensed packets of divine intelligence. Whoa, that's huge, right? Condensed divine intelligence. So we look at code in writing even, right? How we're in form faster than the speed of light, right? And we're in this more dense form. So it's like slowing the velocity to be into a form. This is condensed, oops, condensed divine intelligence. These are instructions of light but it's condensed in a form that has a function that is perceived to look certain ways, but also can be activating in its condensed form to someone that perceives it. But given that function and instruction as directed instantaneously, we'll talk about this in a moment also, but giving it that direction and function instantaneously in your sovereign divine light authority creates it instantly as active, instant as manifest, right? Even if it is so-called condensed form, it's speeding up its velocity into instant uh, potentiality. So I know it sounds interesting, doesn't it? But we're going to dive into that more in just a moment, because basically what we're doing right now is looking at these living libraries, right? They're living libraries held in a way condensed form, but they're in the field, right? If we're looking at even the ethers, depending on our range of perception with frequencies, we look at, say, we're looking at the dew, and you can see, kind of see, feel the dew, right? There's libraries within the dew. That's the etheric realm. So there's still codes within these fields, the energy field, the air field, the cloud field, the water, the rain fields, different fields, multidimensional aspects, layers, octaves, filled with information, awaiting instruction, activation, and function. Otherwise, yes, it's harmonically floating the air, right? It's blowing. But once it has a function, it creates a whole different manifestation experience, conjunction, co-creation, transformation, activation, building, transformations. It's a way more magnified, instantaneous co-creation with what's already in the field awaiting in its isness, right? In its beingness, awaiting an instruction. We look at light, if we emit as light, we're communicating, right? Light is communicating multidimensionally, layers and layers of octaves, planes with and without form. So multidimensionally, all at the same time. So how is it doing that when there is a form, for example? Is that through the form, this form for specific, precise example here is nervous system. Light is communicating through the nervous system multidimensionally, right? Through field awareness, which would be a sensation. How are we feeling through the field what that light is communicating multidimensionally? Say, through the energy, through the sensation, through the experience. What is the field of our energy interacting with other energy? Experiencing is felt through the sensation. So, and through those sensations comes the direct knowing. That's the direct knowing through the intuitive awareness of what is that feeling? What is that reflecting? What is that sensation innately, telling me, communicating with me through the field of what that light is expressing, what it's saying, what its dynamic function is intended to do, or sometimes not intended to do, but is doing that through its frequency emanation, right? So we're looking now at the body being physical density, being physical matter in this experience with light communicating multidimensionally through all these different systems, nervous, autonomic, the brain, the perceptions through the brain, vast and varied, moment to moment, through varied based off of experiences, right? And so we look at the body as um, a part of our tool that we're here, right? Our sacred vessel. But beyond that, the conscious, direct utilization of our tool as part of the technology we are. We could say we're waiting for, and I've heard this many times, waiting for off-planet technology. We are the off-planet technology. We are the technology. Light is the technology, yes. The functionality, the instructions is technology, yes. But we are the technology. Most of us are from other systems, right? Or a range of other systems, DNA communication of a multitude of different systems, which means that we are the technology in form. So our body and has to go hand in hand. No pun intended, has to go hand in hand. The body and conscious direct utilization of and as the light in a body is that we are a receiver and a transmitter, right? We're a receiver and transmitter of light. We're a receiver and transmitter of frequency, sound, energy, light, information, tones, sounds, vibration, and whether all of this is necessarily heard, seen, sensorily known by, all or any particular moment, we still are innately doing that because we are that. We are off planet technology in form on the celestial being of Earth at this time, tuned to the harmonics of whatever tone and tune and octave we're tuned into at any given moment. So we're a receiver and transmitter. However, beyond that, we're also a translator, right? We're a translator, we're a decoder, and a transcriber. So, in addition to that, we're translating, right? We're receiving light, we're translating it into action, into other forms. We're translating it as perhaps we're transforming it. We're translating it as we're communicating it with words, with sounds, with tones, with our vibration, our emanation. We're translating it. In addition to that, we're decoding it. We're decoders. So we're decoding it, perhaps looking for definition of it, whatever that it is, the holography and the technology. We're looking to make sensical description of it, whether in function by our action or to communicate it with words to others. So we're decoding by our nature, decoding to understand more specifically. And as we're doing that, we're also transcribing. We're transcribing the information, meaning that we're transcribing it. So if we look at light communicating multidimensionally through, it's communicating multidimensionally through the physicality, which is our body. It's our vessel, it's our system, it's our cells. It's through our hair, our tissues. It's communicating through everything and beyond. Beyond that, of course, we could look around and see it's communicating through the air, through the dew, through the clouds. Parallel to that would be our nervous system, right? Our nervous system, our autonomic system, communicating through our field awareness, our energy field, our energy body, through our sensations in the organs, the tissues, the nervous system, especially sensation, the sacral and the solar, through the nervous systems, through field awareness and sensation. And we get that, we receive that through direct knowing, through those sensation, whether it's constriction, contraction, varying different sensations. But in that, we are receivers, right? We're receivers and transmitters. We're receiving information through light, as light, receiving, anchoring light. We're transmitting as transmitters, transmitting light into light, transcribing light as light, as a translator, we're translating, we're decoding, we're recoding, we're overriding through the transmission, the receiving, and the transcribing. We're decoding, and we're also, I mean, look at how complex slash intricate every moment is. Beyond that, we're installing, right? We're installing, we're installers, installing light. We're integrating light through every pore, through every cell, through every membrane. We're integrating, integrating all of our facets and filaments and information and codes. We're integrating that and installing it and instating it. We're instating it where we're actually calibrating it into the physical, bringing it in the vessel, all the way in through the cells, into the feet, into every breath and walk. So we are receivers, transmitters, translators, decoders, transcribers, installers. And this is all hopefully with conscious present awareness, installers, integrators, instators, but beyond that also we're anchors, we're directors, and we're creators because, and in addition to directors and creators, utilizing conscious precision is prime as principle, meaning that it's prime principle to know and consciously utilize direct, specific precision because of all that was just stated, of all that we are, which is much even beyond that. Those are terms, but that's some of what light is doing and being through our awareness and our prime pillar as prime principal example of creation, activation, conscious co-creation and utilization, usage. We are doing that, right? We're doing all of that, and how we're doing it and at what amplitude and what acceleration and what transformation we can create really depends on that every moment of us exercising and implementing our authority as divine beings of light doing set above, right? Conscious precision required. Prime is principle because we are prime points of light. So, what does that mean? It means a lot. That means that light organizes and weaves where, when, how, and at what amplitude, and what instantaneous manifestation when and as there is coherence directed. That's huge. Let me breathe that for a moment and say that again. Isn't that huge? Do you feel that? Breathe that power. Conscious co-creators, divine authority, sovereign beings, right? Let's say that again now. Light is you as light, which is divine conscious technology, organizes and weaves, and beyond that builds, which is we're discussing rebuilding, reclamation, divine purity, and statement in the declaration. That's fun. In the Declaration of the Emancipation Proclamation happening now in the instatement, light is organizing and weaving and building where and when there is coherence and as directed. Conscious presence, directed, precise, precision, precision prime principle. What does that mean? We're going to need to eventually, or now, into some degree, filter out and delete and override the passive ideology, right? These passive ideologies, and now this applies to a certain extent, okay? Passive ideology of when you hear those references to I'm bringing something through, right? Or this is a transmission I'm bringing through, but there's no actual total awareness or to what extent there's an awareness of what is that you're bringing through, from where, what is it, why, what's its purpose, and what is its function. Now we're going to need to get it together as divine sovereign beings. And I'm saying this lightly to put a pun in a way, is that the passive ideology doesn't work. It's light is, yes. Light always is. Source always is, and it's always divine and perfect. So what's coming through is innately coming through, yes. However, we are building now, and we are building and weaving with precision and divine righteousness and override to create a new world. So we're going to need to dissolve this passivity and become conscious co-creators of holographic technology, light, code with precision and direction as multidimensional architecture. Why? You say, what? Why? What's going on? We need to do something different? Yes, we're transforming. So we are the technology. Light is the technology, which means that, one example, what's the science of the subtle? What is holographic principle? What are all these things? You know what? These aren't complex things, holographic technology, because we are the technology. So if we look at the subtleties of light and the power and the magnitude, we'll find that this holographic principle applies to the whole, which means that the whole is encoded in every geometrical part and particle, which means you're not externally accessing anything, right? You're not accessing something external. You know, these things, you're not going out really and looking for any of it. You are remembering, one example, you are remembering how to interface with the geometry that is creation and technology. And you as the co-creation, as conscious divine sovereign directors and creators of your world. Breathe out. You're remembering how to interface with the geometry that is creation, and you choosing to divinely, precisely direct the light with your thought is the co-creation. So we can look at that also as weaving and expanding with coherence, as light and with light. We are that. So we're basically weaving with direction, right? We're building with direction, which would be how anyone would be building, right? You would have building plans. If you were going to build something, you'd probably have blueprints, would be your plans. So we look at holographic light structures, we look at geometries. Crystalline blueprints is the instructions. So what the instruction is the function. Where is the plumbing going? How is it installing? How big will it be? Where is it going? How deep will it be? How is that aligning to the other structures? And it all starts to make simpler, divine, intricate sense because they are intricate, but they're not complex. Architectures are stabilizing now and building, for that matter, into expanded, evolved states, which means these new light structures, you keep hearing, what does this new light structure mean? It's expanded state, evolved state of being, meaning evolved, higher octave, pure tone, pure frequency, vaster potentiality. So if we're looking at new light codes, tones, different tones, higher octaves, pure tones, able to be implemented and built and integrated, as I was stating before, into as transcribers, anchors, builders. There must be that prime foundation for building into these expanded and evolved states, which means higher awareness, conscious presence, conscious awareness, and allowing multidimensional and beyond that too is multiversal embodiment and holographic expansion. Holographic expansion, we look at everything as geometry. you're looking at, a cell magnified into the whole, right? Going back to holography and holographic, how everything is part of a whole. We're all part of a unified one whole.